Hey everyone, it's Snack from Crow's Nest, and we have what appears to be some really bad news about Edison format and Time Wizard in general. So I'm just going to get right into it. Um, I was sent this. You can fact check me. Maybe this whole video is garbage, but I've seen it multiple places that Konami, starting with the North American World Championship qualifier for the Time Wizard events, this bottom line is the most important part here. Starting at the NAWCQ and moving forward, presumably, current game mechanics and current card text will be used for Time Wizard events. Now, you might be wondering, what does that even mean, right? Well, current game mechanics like maybe no turn player ignition effect priority, basically what people in Edison just call prio. Well, that doesn't exist in the current game. So that will not be in Konami Edison events anymore, and who knows, that might also affect at your locals. If they run a Time Wizard, is Konami going to threaten that store's OTS status if they allow you to play with Prio? Like it was in September 2010, or April 2010, I should say. It's kind of ironic that they would call the format April 2010 and then not play by the rules of April 2010. But an even bigger thing, arguably, is the card text. Because let me just get into it. I'll just go through every single card I think might be affected by this. And I think you'd be shocked at how many huge changes this will be. I might have to edit that out. So I have a list of cards here that I think very good chance that they are affected by these changes. So first of all, no priority. Well, that means you can't normal substitute and immediately attribute it off to get a swap frog. You also can't normal substitute, tribute off something else, right? You have to normal it and then ask your opponent if they have a response before you can activate the effect. Pretty big. Same thing with Gale. Your opponent has a Stardust. You have to normal Gale and ask if they want to do anything before you can activate the effect to have the attack of Stardust. Lonefire Blossom. You cannot normal it and tribute it off. Same as substitute. You have to normal and wait. That means that you can normal substitute and they can just activate Torrential right there. Same with Lonefire. Normal Lonefire on an empty board, they just Torrential and you don't get your Titanial. You don't even get to fill up your grave, right? Lumina, once again, can't priority pitch. Same thing with Grepher. You cannot... In fact, Grepher, it's especially bad because you normal Grepher and there's no prio, so they can just hit bottomless and then you're sitting there with Sirocco and Vayu in your hand. Can't do anything with them. How about Judgment Dragon, right? Is it following me? I don't know why Dueling Book is being weird, but Judgment Dragon. You summon Judgment Dragon, and you don't get to immediately blow up the field. And I understand those of us who hate playing against Lightsworn are kind of maybe going to be okay with that, but it does kind of hurt the deck significantly if you summon Judgment Dragon and they just go Book of Moon, and then just run it over or pop it somehow. Darkroom Dragon, same thing. This one I'm totally okay with. It probably shouldn't have prio. Book of Moon. This is just a card that, because nothing has prio anymore, Book of Moon is just insane now. Raigeki Break, same thing. Like, if they synchro into Brionac, you don't have to ask for prio. You can just pop the Brionac and then, well, nice job. You just spent like 6 levels of material for nothing. Compulse, same thing. In fact, that's even better into Brionac. Mig Brionac, I have like my Mizuki I'm ready to pitch. Sorry, actually. It's going back to the extra deck. And you don't get anything out of it. Or I can just bottomless the Brionac and same thing happens. Okay, here are some cards that got errataed. So, Rescue Cat. In Edison, when you summon the monsters off of Rescue Cat, they get their effects. So if you're playing Gladiator Beast and you summon Test Tiger and Sam Knight, you can activate the effect of Test Tiger to put the Sam Knight back in deck and get like Secutor. Or you can get 2 Test Tiger. Or if you're playing Synchro Cat or X-Saber, you can go into 2 Arbellum, and when they attack directly, they do get to rip cards out of the opponent's hand. But post-errata, you don't quite get to do that. Also, Rescue Cat's another card that gets affected by not having prio. So if you normal Rescue Cat and they Raigeki Break it, you don't get to put the Rescue Cat in grave and go search out 2 more things. Here's an insane one. So Raikou has been the subject of many different changes over the years, but the current one is that the effects happen simultaneously, which means when you flip Raikou and pop a Dupe Frog, it won't miss timing anymore. But far more important than that, it does not target anymore. So the fact that Raikou doesn't target, you can flip Raikou now and just say, I'm activating the effect to pop a card on the field. They don't even know if it's one of their cards. So your opponent has 3 back row. You can just flip Raikou and say, I'm going to pop something. And then they have to respond right there. On resolution, you decide which one to pop. So your opponent can no longer respond to which, like, they can't say, oh, this card, this, like, Icarus attack is being targeted by Raikou. I'm going to activate it in response. You have to preemptively hit the Icarus attack. And also, if you want to Raikou deal with a card like Machina Fortress, you can just do that now because it doesn't target, so Machina Fortress won't rip a card out of their hand anymore. Raikou is now just a clean out to Machina Fortress. You don't have to worry about it. Same thing with Titanial. Titanial can't negate Raikou anymore, so Titanial's pretty bad, especially since you can't prio off the Lone Fire to get her. Sangan. This card got eroded. It's not a huge deal, but there's another thing with it. So the minor thing is that if you use the Sangan effect, you can't use that monster's effect later that turn. So let's say I Sangan and I search out Dandelion. If I'm still in that same turn, I can't pitch Dandelion and get tokens. Or if I Sangan search out DD Crow, I can't use that Crow that same turn. So that's pretty bad. I'll come back to Sangan, make sure I remember. Braincarn. This card is really bad because it can't steal any of the best cards in the game, like Dark Arm Dragon or Brionac or Absolute Zero, and that's because it got eroded. It can only steal cards that can be normal summoned. You can't steal Chaos Sorcerer, can't steal Judgment Dragon with Brain Control. It can only steal monsters that can be normal summoned post-errata. Future Fusion is no longer Foolish Burial for 5. If you're playing dragons, it's no longer Send Mally to the grave because you have to wait a turn after it's on the field. So if I activate Future Fusion, I now have to wait until my next standby phase to even send those cards to the graveyard, which means my opponent has an entire turn to just use heavy on it, pop it with Raikou, anything they want to do to get rid of it. Until my next standby phase, I don't even send the cards. It's pretty bad. Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon is now a hard once per turn, which means you can't activate the effect of Red Eyes. You can't activate the effect of Red Med to bring out a dragon, and then summon another Red Med and activate that same effect. Only one Red Med can activate that effect for your entire turn. But let's be real, no one's playing dragons now that Future Fusion is destroyed. Necro Valley basically is way, 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 way more powerful. I don't think Stardust can bring itself out of the grave. It actually stops Rekindling now. It stops Treeborn. It stops Plague Spreader. It's just an actual really strong floodgate. But another interesting thing is that field spells, you can now have 2 of them. So if you have a Necro Valley and you want to kill it with a Gear Town, you can't do that either. Speaking of Gear Town, I'm pretty sure you cannot set Gear Town over Gear Town anymore and have the first Gear Town trigger. So any deck that was playing Gear Town is now dead. Here's a really weird one. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, Raikou's insane. Well, that's what we have Aaron for. So in modern format, cards have to be in the spot that they activated in order for them to trigger. So this is kind of complicated. But if you go Aaron, attack into Raikou, Aaron will activate first and shuffle Raikou into the deck. And then since Raikou isn't in the place where it was supposed to activate, it just won't go off. Same thing with Hamster. Any flip monster that Aaron runs into, it just shovels it into the deck and it doesn't get its effect anymore. Similarly, if you tribute Sangan for let's say Caius. Let me think. That might be a weird one. There's situations where you can tribute Sangan and your opponent can DD Crow it. That's why I have Crow over here. Where they can DD Crow it before Sangan's effect would go on the chain. And if once Sangan leaves the graveyard before it's activated, its effect, it just won't activate. Same thing with Dandelion. If you go Lightning Vortex, pitch Dandelion, and then in response to the Lightning Vortex, you Crow the Dandelion, you won't get tokens off the Dandelion because it just moved its location. And that's the reasoning why Era now just negates Float Monsters, basically. Rivalry now doesn't have any of those restrictions, so, or any of the loosened up restrictions, so you now definitely can't tribute Caius over Treeborn anymore. And same thing with like Consecrated Light. You can't tribute something over Consecrated Light unless it's a light. So Rivalry and Gozen. We love seeing Necro Valley, Rivalry, and Gozen get buffed because Floodgates are awesome. And then the reason I have Gores on here is because Goyo is basically unplayable. So we have Goyo Guardian needs an Earth Tuner now. How many Earth Tuners can you name in Edison? There's like Airbellum, of course, Nettles, Psychic Commander, I think. So basically, Goyo Guardian is a card that nobody will be able to play. And that means that you cannot make a board that has the ability to attack for damage and run over Gores to steal it. So Gores just got buffed. Also, it means that Stardust is pretty tough to deal with because, like I said, there's no Goyo Guardian. And basically anything that would deal with it, like maybe a Gale, you don't have Prio for that anymore. Let's see. If they want to make Brionac to get rid of Stardust, once again, they don't have Prio. So yeah, Stardust is just kind of insane now, and so maybe you can just play a game of let me set up Rivalry and then put Stardust on the field. Kind of crazy. Here's a big one. Absolute Zero. If you send this to the extra deck, it will not trigger anymore. So if you use Compulse on Absolute Zero, if you use Ryza on Absolute Zero, it just won't blow up the opponent's field anymore. So yeah, that's a pretty big nerf to Ab Zero. There are now tons of clean outs, and the fact that Compulse is already good into cards that need their priority to set up, well, now it's really good into Absolute Zero as well. Brionac also got eroded. If you manage to steal Brionac, you can't steal it with BrainCon, but if you steal it with Enemy Control or Mind Control or Mark of the Rose, now Brionac cannot bounce itself. So even though you stole it, it cannot bounce any of your own cards, and it cannot bounce things multiple times in one turn. So if you're playing zombies and you make Brionac, you cannot, what would it be, pitch Mizuki, bring something out, and then pitch something else. You have to do all your pitching in one effect, and you can't pitch any of your own stuff anyway, so you can't pitch your own you can't pitch a card to bounce your own Call the Haunted. So Brionac, and like I said, you can't pitch to bounce itself, which means steal effects are almost useless on Brio. I shouldn't say almost useless. They're way less useful. Ancient Fairy had a minor nerf. You can't destroy a field spell and search the same one, but nobody's playing Gear Town anyway, so probably not a big deal. I'm not exactly sure how Army Arm works, but I know that at one point, the Army Arm Colossal OTK did not work. And that was because Army Arm needed to... It checked when the monster was in the grave, and Colossal was never in the grave during the substep that Army Arm checked. But then they eroded Army Arm again, but it still doesn't say the exact wording. So this one we might have to get precedent for to figure out how this one would work. That's pretty much everything, but there's one more thing I want you to notice. Do you notice like any changes to like Black Whirlwind or Shura or Bora or Sirocco or anything that Blackwings would care about? Icarus Attack, really? Not really. Basically, every deck gets nerfed by these changes except for Blackwings, which are already one of the best decks. Vayu gets nerfed because Raikou... Actually, no. Raikou is hurt by Aaron, but that's probably fine. But they also get hurt by... Greffer not having Prio anymore, and they get hurt by the fact that they don't get to play something that Blackwings do get to do is play Rivalry and Gozen, which is pretty nice. Vayus may be okay, but especially because Raikou's nicer now, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Also, I don't know. Anyways, Vayu might be okay. Blackwings, I think, are going to be as strong as ever. Light Sworns are hurt by the fact that JD's a lot weaker. Frogs are hurt by the fact that you don't have Prio on Substitute anymore, and if you're playing Hero Frog, the Absolute Zero is a lot weaker. So basically, every deck that you could imagine caring about, Glads have Cat weakened, but everything else is probably fine. But if everybody's playing Blackwings, then that kind of hurts Glads. So, but if you want to play a format that's all Blackwings and maybe a little bit of Glads, maybe a little bit of like Light Sworn or Hero Beat, yeah, that's great. But I really think that Konami's making a mistake by doing this. And the other thing is, if they make local OTS shops abide by these same rules, it's a really big deal because they're not just creating their own format, which I understand why they do it. It's easier for their judges to have the same cards always do the same things. It's easier for them to not have to think, oh, back in 2010, the rules were like this. And in my modern 2025 brain, they work differently. I understand that. But if you're going to make local card shops do this, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that want to play the actual historical Edison format, and they just can't anymore. And so we're not getting a new format. You are obliterating the old one. And what happens if Dueling Book Ladder also starts using the same rulings? Like, you are actually squeezing people out of being able to play the format that they built up. They built up this huge community to play this game. And they're paying to go to your events all the time, and now you're kind of killing it. So if anyone at Konami sees this, I strongly advise against it, even though I completely understand where you're coming from. But you are completely taking a format that's known for its diversity and potentially like strangling it to death and making it Blackwing format, which is already a very strong format. Like, Blackwings are strong enough. Anyways, that's probably my entire rant. I just saw this and it bothered me, so made a video real quick. Hopefully I'm just being an alarmist and none of this actually happens. Adios.